You. Ugh. Well, let's see here. August 3rd, 2025, 12:55 a.m. Eastern. And this is going to continue the project that I started. It's all technology based. One way or another, it's all connected. So I'm going to start this off. May or may not be connected. I don't know. You make your own decision. I'm just providing the entertainment. This is Lisa Haven report. From what something that Dan Bongino had done. I'm an amateur. Don't mind me. Here.
The director of the FBI dropped a bombshell on his X page that I believe you guys need to know about, especially in light of all the latest allegations against Obama, his cabinet members, his administration, the Epstein files, Ghislaine Maxwell meeting with the DOJ, information coming out regarding the weaponization of the FBI, the DOJ, the freaking January 6th pipe bomber. I mean, there is a lot of stuff that we have no answers to. And I believe some of those answers, obviously, Dan Bongino more than likely knows. And I respect him to the tens, right? But now that he's there, he's going through a lot, I believe. And it really speaks volumes about the truth of what's going on in our United States government. But let's go on over to his X page. so you guys can hear it straight from his mouth. He posted this, by the way, July 26th. It is the 27th as of the making of this video, and he posted it in the morning. But here's what he said. During my tenure here as the deputy director of the FBI, I have repeatedly relayed to you that things are happening that might not be immediately visible, but they are happening. And I'm going to pause that. I'm going to come back. So he's saying there's stuff that we're doing. You don't know that we're doing it. Stuff is coming down the pipeline. Who knows? Maybe arrest, maybe indictments, maybe convictions, but it takes time. It really and truly does. You can't just hand out an indictment and then go to court the next day. It doesn't work like that. Anybody who's ever had to go to court knows it could be a year, it could be 6 months, it could be drawn out. But I think that's what he's talking about here. He goes on to say, the director and I are committed to stamping out public corruption and the political weaponization of both law enforcement and intelligence operations. It is a priority for us. But what I have learned in the course of our properly predicated and necessary investigations into the aforementioned matters has shocked me down to my core. That's powerful. We cannot run a republic like this. I'll never be the same after learning what I've learned. Those are some chilling words. If you think about this man who has exposed so much corruption on his podcast, now at the very upper levels of the FBI saying, I'm never going to be the same. I'm shocked to my core, which to me says things are even worse than what any of us ever imagined. And in my opinion, which is just what that is, that's what he's trying to say here. Look, I've learned things that I never thought were possible. That holy cow, I can't believe this is going on. And I'm imagining the worst of the worst corruption, but it ultimately goes here, Dan Bongino, right? If we don't do anything about it, what good is it? What good are you doing there, right? But anyway, he goes on and he concludes with this. We are going to conduct these righteous and proper investigations, hallelujah, by the book and in accordance with the law. We are going to get the answers we all deserve. As with any investigation, I cannot predict where it will land, but I can promise you an honest and dignified effort at truth. Not his truth, not your truth, but the truth. God bless America and all those who defend her. Respectfully, Dan. So he's telling us here, we are going to get to the bottom of it. We're going to go and do everything by the book. It's not going to be politicized, no matter what side of the fence you're on. And that's really what I believe he's saying here. He goes, we may have some Republicans in trouble. We may have some Democrats in trouble. And it doesn't matter what side of the fence you're on, which is the kind of FBI we need, somebody who doesn't care what side of the fence you're on, somebody who's not politicized. And that's kind of what I'm getting here. And he's saying this, we're going to get you the answers we all deserve. And that's what I want. And then he concludes with this little mystery statement here, I cannot predict where it's going to land. In other words, he doesn't know the end result because he's not the only one in charge, if you get my drift. So he's going to have to answer to other people regarding some of that. Right? But he's going to damn well do the best that he can to get the American public the truth of what's going on. And he's telling you it's going to be time. We're not going to know immediately. But how much time? Well, that is ultimately the question, isn't it? Is it going to be, after you're already out of office? Are we even going to know before? Are you going to be allowed to tell us some of those information? Or are there going to be ongoing investigations forever like the FBI has always had? And the question therein lies, why? Why are there always these answers that we just barely got answers to MLK, barely got answers to what happened to JFK and Martin Luther King? We just got answers. John F. Kennedy, we just got some of those answers. We're still waiting on answers from Epstein, which, we all know they claim these files don't exist. But speaking of those files, I want to show you this. This just came out the other day as well. This is on Zero Hedge. Ghislaine Maxwell appeal looms as lawyer says she's discussed 100 different people during the interview with the DAJ. In other words, she name dropped over 100 people. Where's that list? Where's that information? Is it in her little black book? If Epstein doesn't have one, or however, you can find clients. Maybe it's not in a physical list, but you can find clients by following the money. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows. So here she is with 100 different people. Obviously, the girl's looking for a pardon or something to the effect of, right? But either way, That's a lot of people. I want to know who those are. I want to know who you're talking about there. Does Dan Bongino know about those 100 people? And I'm sure he might in some way, shape, or form. But that's an awful lot of people. And how corrupt has it gotten? Are we going to finally see some arrest? And I'm going to be really honest with you. Trump has already came out and basically said that because in a roundabout way, and I'm paraphrasing here, right? Don't take it verbatim. Trump has basically said Obama is not going to have to answer for anything because he has executive privilege of some sort, right? But if that's the case, okay, what about Brennan and the whole gang and Clapper and Comer and all of those? Because they were highly involved in all of that. And speaking of, we still have the case with Tulsi Gabbard going out, right? Tulsi Gabbard's treason allegations trigger a high wire act from the Obama world, NBC News. And some of the stuff that they talk about in that article is his administration doesn't know how to handle all this new information about Obama. And they think it's just here's talk and misinformation. And then Clapper and Brennan are coming out. In fact, Clapper, speaking of Clapper, I believe Clapper or Brennan, one of them, but they are actually lawyering up in light of all these allegations. This is a good news and a good direction regarding that, right? Because we have to see somebody answer for the crimes they committed. And these are crimes at the upper level of the government that were committed by Obama and his administration, bar none. If nothing is done, then what good are we? If those certain people, because of your standard, can get away with anything, what good is our country in the effect of going after people for crimes? Are those only for us little people, for everybody but Congress and senators and high up business people? Is it only for us little people that the system exists for? Our entire criminal justice system will break apart if some of these people don't have to answer for crimes they actually committed, like you and I would have to answer for these crimes. But with all of that, I love you guys. I just want to remind you, get to restrictedrepublic.com. I've got bombshell information on there. All the videos that go missing on here are on Restricted Republic. So I want to encourage you to sign up there, support Justice Knight and myself there. Go to restrictedrepublic.com and check it out today. But with that, I love you guys. I'm Lisa Haven, signing out.
We're doing it. We're doing it.
Well, I got a rather interesting report I want to share with you guys today. A warning, if you will, from Julian Assange, who was in some kind of confinement and detention for about 14 years, released a little over a year ago. Well, I want to bring it up in light of everything that's going on because there is still an attack on journalists and media today, unlike we've ever seen before. A lot of the mainstream media, although they claim Project Mockingbird isn't happening, the mainstream media is hiring former CIA officials and FBI officials and intelligence community officials left and right. And I believe wholeheartedly that they are taken over by the IC and still are. And journalists are at risk under both Republican and Democrat administrations. So this is a warning that I think needs to be heeded, and I'm just going to hearken you to listen to the entire video. But as a quick reminder, please make sure you're still subscribed to that channel and hit that like button. But let's start here with this. And this was published by WikiLeaks on June 26, so a little over a month ago. And this is the moment in this video where Julian Assange sets foot in Australia after 14 years of detention. So again, that was on June 26. He's taller than I had expected him to be, but there he is back after 14 years of detention. Now, to kind of give you a little history briefly, because I don't want to reiterate everything that happened before I get into some of the warning, from Julian Assange. He was first charged in December 2010 when Swedish prosecutors issued an arrest warrant for him based on some kind of sex allegation. It just kind of went from there. And then in 2012, there was rather intense investigation by the United States in 2012. And that, by the way, was under Barack Obama. They started investigating him here in the U.S. after the stuff happened in 2010. Around 2012, under Barack Obama, they really went intently about seeking information. And then in 2019, as you see here, on this, he was arrested at the Ecuador embassy in London after his asylum was revoked. The U.S. authorities unsealed an indictment charging Assange with conspiracy to commit computer intrusion, and that was in 2019. As you see here on this, he was arrested at the Ecuador embassy in London after his asylum was revoked. The U.S. authorities unsealed an indictment charging Assange with conspiracy to commit intrusion, and that was in 2019.
I'm just going to add a footnote there. We're talking about computers and technology and the power of the God. Let that sink in. It's just as easy to plant something on somebody's device as it is to read the information. Data flows both ways all the time.
Unfortunately, under Donald J. Trump. But remember, the intelligence community was still highly involved, I believe, with Barack Obama. And it started under Barack. And unfortunately, this all happened under Donald J. Trump as well. But there is a warning that must be heeded. But before I share that, just a quick break from my sponsor. Well, the American healthcare system is unfortunately broken, and Big Pharma charges an arm and a leg for their products. Not only that, but insurance companies are focused on actually growing healthcare spending today and claim you're risk-free for about a little over a year. What is going on and what has come of it, and what is the warning that we should heed? We'll take a look at computerweekly.com. 1 year since being freed, Julian Assange still a victim of state secrecy. If the State Department's arguments prevail in a Freedom of Information Act litigation, the truth about the United States' actions against Julian Assange and WikiLeaks journalists will never be known. That's happening right now, and they're trying to get the information via Freedom of Information requests from multiple countries, by the way, that include the United States of America. And if they are unsuccessful, we may never know the story. And here's why, right? Let's start here. It's 1 year since WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange became a free man again. And this was published June 25th, 2024, so just a month ago. When Julian Assange addressed the Council of Europe last October, he was unable to speak about the years he spent incarcerated in the UK, facing allegations of Espionage Act violations and computer intrusion. And this is what he said, and this is a chilling statement, and it's a warning to everyone. This is from Julian Assange. Quote, "I am not yet fully equipped to speak about what I have endured, the relentless struggle to stay alive, both physically and mentally," he said. "Nor can I speak yet about the deaths by hanging, murder, and medical neglect of my fellow prisoners." Those are very powerful words by Julian Assange, which he left with us back then, and speak ever more boldly today when he's out there saying, I can't talk about all the crap that they did to me, because of this thing, this charge, these acts that I'm having to fight with. And hey, people were murdered, people were neglected, and people were hung who were my fellow prisoners. Did it have anything to do with the fact that he was a journalist? Maybe he shared information with them. Well, we will never know, right? Maybe they were trying to silence people around him. Maybe they weren't. But what we do know is that because Julian Assange dared to be an actual journalist, he had to endure hell. And the warning is what happened to him is not exempt from happening to other people. While he's got the freedom, if you will, today, he was confined for over 14 years. We're talking about a journalist who was just doing journalism, right? And that's the thing. And that's what he endured. But he goes on to talk about this. He says the arbitrary detention he endured for almost a decade, the smear campaign against him in WikiLeaks, CIA plans to kill or kidnap him revealed by protected witnesses. Yes, you read that right. The Espionage Act charges, the risk of spending his life entombed in U.S. Supermax prison, the 5 years and 2 months spent in Britain's toughest prison, Belmarsh, and the grave decline of his health. In May 2019, 52-year-old Assange was publicly charged by the U.S. Department of Justice. That's in 2019, again, under Trump, with 17 counts under the U.S. Espionage Act of 1917 and 1 count under the U.S. Computer Fraud and Abuse Act over WikiLeaks' 2010 publication of documents leaked by U.S. Army whistleblower Chelsea Manning. So that kind of gives you an overall what happened. But the deal is, again, I want to reiterate, I understand this happened under Trump, but you have to remember there was still deep state highly involved. And I believe they were highly involved at the time of that. And I really wish that Donald Trump would have, exonerated or dropped the charges against Julian Assange. I was pushing it back before he got out of office the first time. And unfortunately, that did not happen at the time. But either way, we are dealing with something different. Multiple countries, including the U.S., are refusing these Freedom of Information Act requests surrounding Julian Assange. The reason they're claiming, well, I'm guessing highly classified, who knows? But here's that. And this is on that same article. The U.S. refuses to release key Assange memos, emails, and cables. The U.S. authorities are trying to keep cables, memos, and emails on Assange and WikiLeaks classified, even though they date back 15 years and are in disputable public interest. They reveal unprecedented intelligence, law enforcement, and diplomatic operations conducted by the U.S. government and its allies against Assange and WikiLeaks between 2010 and 2012. That was under Barack Obama. And that's the key there. And I think that was, who was really behind a lot of this. But when WikiLeaks was publishing its most important revelations, the collateral murder video, the Afghan, Iraq war logs, the U.S. diplomatic cables, and the Guantanamo files. The documents detail how Assange and WikiLeaks journalists were targeted by the United States and alleged intelligence services, including various agencies that tracked their movement, and what intelligence was shared with foreign officials. So they were tracking and monitoring the movements of journalists because they want to know what they're going to drop and say. Mark my words, that is still happening today. Now, they have overtaken the mainstream media, right? In my opinion, we've got many CIA and FBI and IC agents in the mainstream media. Call it Project Mockingbird never ended or whatever, even though they claim it ended. I don't believe it necessarily did, but they control that. What they don't control are the likes of like Julian Assange, say Alex, say Dan Bongino, say Joe Rogan, say Lisa Haven, Justice Knight. They don't control any of that, and therein lies their problem. If, it goes on though, If revealed, these cables and memos and emails would provide factual information, including what happens when a media organization runs up against the full force of the state for its journalistic work in exposing large state criminality. And Julian Assange is a perfect example of what happens to thou shalt not do what you just did. And he ran up against the full state authority. The document the U.S. authorities are refusing to release lies at the center of a legal battle based on the Freedom of Information Request Act in the U.S. The author of this article, or the Freedom of Information Act of Iowa, the article of this article has sought to obtain this document from the State Department since 2018. They have been asking since 2018. The U.S. litigation is part of a larger FOIA battle in 4 jurisdictions, including Britain, Sweden, and Australia, aimed at unearthing the truth about Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. And for decades, they have denied the request. And at least Britain and Sweden have actually destroyed material pertaining to it. I wonder if they destroyed information here in the U.S. as well. But bottom line of this, if the State Department's arguments prevail, in the U.S., the Freedom of Information Act litigation, the truth about Julian Assange's persecution and the WikiLeaks journalists will never, ever see the light of day. And I'm afraid if this doesn't happen now under the Trump administration, I do not think it ever will. And that's a warning, right, to Americans. Like, we're supposed to be able to have the ability to get the answers to the things that we need to find out why something happened. Not push everything under the rug and hide it. I don't care what administration you're under. We can't even know the real truth about what happened to this journalist 15 some odd years ago. It's like JFK, MLK, Epstein all over again, right? And in conclusion, I want to leave you with 2 things. This right here was published on their WikiLeaks X page by Gabriel Shipton, right? He launched an information rights project. And here's what he says, and I think this is an amazing quote. Freedom of expression does not defend itself. It's not automatic. It erodes in increments. Each time someone stays silent, each time government overreach and no one objects, each time a publisher, journalist, or source is punished, and the public looks away. In Julian Assange's case, we saw just how close to the edge things had come. And we're not backing away from that We're accelerating towards it. And that's so true. And that was the point of this video. It's not time to turn away and look a blind eye. We've got a good man in charge right now. We've got some good things happening in the United States of America. Now is to start taking a stand with the freedom of press. And I'm not talking about the mainstream media controlled press. I'm talking about the alternative media, the new media who is out there doing the job that the mainstream media was supposed to do and is not doing. And thank God there are some of us out there. And by the way, this movie is up and coming. This was published 2025, but it's this new movie. I guess this is a documentary. It's called The $6 Billion Man, a documentary about the Julian Assange saga. So that's up and coming at some point in time in the future. So interested in seeing that nonetheless. But anyway, wanted to share it. It's one of our, amendment rights to have a free press. And I think we need to make sure that we do before Donald Trump gets out of office. And hopefully they release some of that information to WikiLeaks and Julian Assange. But with all of that, as a quick reminder, get to restrictedrepublic.com. Check it out today. Please go there, sign up. There's some big reports on there that are exclusive to that platform. You can see some of the video names here. Not all, we post 6 videos, 5 to 6 videos exclusive to that platform every single week that are just for the Restricted Republic audience. All our videos are on there as well, by the way, without any commercials. So that's kind of a good news. But check it out at restrictedrepublic.com and use the coupon code Lisa and the number 5 to get it for $5 per month. Anyhow, with all of that, I love you guys so much. I'm Lisa Haven, signing out. Please go there to sign up. There's big reports on there that are exclusive to that platform. You can see the video
If you think a fanny pack is gonna help you when you head outdoors, think again. You need the Bearskin Tactical Hoodie 4.0. It's the ultimate 10-pocket utility hoodie for fishing, golf, hunting, camping, boating, or conquering foreign lands. It's the must-have travel layer for cold mornings and chilly evenings when you're away from home. And if it starts raining, you can attach the packable heavy storm rain jacket and pack it away in its own stash pocket when the storm is over. Choose between the original 340 GSM Bearskin or the brand new 210 GSM midweight Bearskin for milder days. Both are finished with chunky SAB zips and come in sizes up to 4XL. You're seeing this video because we want to offer you 60% off the Bearskin 4.0 with free delivery. And you may not see this video again, so click the button below now to reserve your order, or you can go to stopbadhoodies.com to claim your discount. Thousands of men already love wearing the Bearskin hoodie, with loads of 5-star reviews on Trustpilot. Because honestly, your average kangaroo hoodie these days is big, baggy, and useless, like wearing a trash bag with a fanny pack. That's why we built the Bearskin hoodie like a tank, with the ultimate combination of strength, storage, and breathability. And with the improved windsolation technology on the waist, arms, and hood, you can customize your insulation to match the weather. Finally, the ultimate 3-in-1 travel jacket for men who choose to be prepared without being weighed down. Just like you, we hate carrying man bags, duffel bags, or messenger bags to keep our valuables safe and dry. Because hey, you're not a messenger, you're a man. That's why this is the world's only outdoor utility hoodie with 10 pockets to keep everything on you and nothing flapping behind you. So, does the Bearskin hoodie actually look good on a day-to-day basis? No, it looks fantastic. This is a hoodie you can take out into the wild, wear at home, or on a plane, or while you're climbing up a glacier on your hands and knees. With a fully adjustable design, you'll get that perfect square profile that's never too bulky or baggy, with a customized fit that's tailored to you. That's why everybody knows that guys look better in a bearskin. You see that material? It's called Bearskin Microfleece. That's because it's made from real polar bears. Not really though, but it's made with double-brushed microfleece that's warm enough for crisp mornings and breathable enough to wear all day. So, if you're ready, go to stopbadhoodies.com or click the button below to activate the 60% off deal. That's why everybody knows that guys look better in bearskin. See that material? It's called Bearskin Microfleece. That's because it's made from breathing pillows. Not breathing though, but it's made with double-brushed microfleece that's warm enough for crisp mornings and breathable enough to wear all day. So, if you're ready, go to stopbadhoodies.com and click the button below to activate the 60% off deal.
Okay, so I gotta switch over to another browser. I just saw something that came across my radar that's really kind of a hot topic, I think. Let's see if I can find it. Okay, so I gotta switch over. Browser. Damn it, I don't want Damn it, Elon. Should I do it that way? Why am I being asked to verify? I don't want to verify fuck. Alright, so if I try logging in with my goddamn email address like anybody else, why am I being asked for my phone number? Like, what the fuck? There is such a thing as too much information, or information overload, or more specifically, none of your fucking business. Here's my thought. Why am I being asked for my phone number? Like, what the fuck? There is such a thing as too much information. Information overload. Or specifically, none of your fucking business. Here's my thought. Meanwhile, I really want to show you this thing, but I can't figure out how I'm going to do it. Oops, something went wrong. Well, that's the phone number I've been using for everything. Fuck tarts. Alright, fine. Okay. Fuck off. We're plan B. Alright, so I don't know if anybody's aware, but there's a, I want to refer to it as a ghost account, if you will. It's called Ghostify, as in John McAfee, but his ghost. And the caption on this is soon the entire world will find out the truth about me. The countdown has started. Spread the word. That, to me, sounds like a dead man switch. So, I'm going to screenshot this video. Cage on tin. People are asking what this cage of tin foil and metal is all about. That's a real name. It's a Faraday cage. A Faraday cage is a cage which emits no signal, and no signal can enter. And you can see this all around, including the floor, all metal, the ceiling. Why am I doing this? Why am I going to this trouble? Well, in addition to the Faraday cage, we have an 8-channel scrambler, which you can see here, I hope, which prevents any signal from getting into this room or leaving this room, just in case the Faraday cage fails. Why am I doing this? Because I am an escaped slave. A slave to the system that escaped, and I am a loud voice. You think you're not slaves, but you are. The 9 to 5 existence of your current lives is structured by the American industrial corporate complex, complicit with our government. You need to free yourselves from this, not as me. You don't have to go out and risk yourself by speaking out loudly, but free yourselves. This is not what life is. This is not what life is. Life is a great mystery, a glorious, unbelievably mysterious, beautiful existence if you are free from those who control you, provide you with propaganda, lie to you, deceive. Everyone is looking for this escaped slave. I will not be held, and I will continue to speak. Thank you for listening. Federal Reserve will cease to exist, and federal income tax will be unconstitutional once again. Not because of conspiracy, but because these systems were never built on the consent of the government. And what is built without the people eventually falls by them. In 1913, BTW, the video that's playing right now is from Anonymous. It's the Phoenix Dragon. And I find it kind of funny that John McAfee's account backs up just before this video. And the message is similar. I'm just drawing a parallel here. I'm not stating anything fiction, or just my observation. Do with that as you will. I'm going to get my phone to cooperate. Okay. All Americans were distracted by the holidays. Too quiet to sit and rewrote the American Republic. The 16th Amendment gave Washington the power to tax your income, and the Federal Reserve Act gave a private banking cartel control over your money. Neither had the consent of the people, and both redefine the relationship between citizen and state. Before 1913, a federal income tax was unconstitutional by design. The founders understood that when government can tax your labor directly, it can control your life. That protection, written into the Constitution, was torn away. And the Federal Reserve, born in secret at Jekyll Island, drafted by bankers, passed in the dark, a private institution cloaked in public power, beyond elections, beyond accountability. Economist Milton Friedman said it best: no institution in the U.S. has such a high public standing and such poor record of performance. Let's review that record. The Fed doubled prices during World War I, helped spark the recession of 1929, then turned it into the Great Depression. It fueled the inflation of the 1970s, and in recent decades, it printed trillions to inflate Wall Street while draining Main Street. You didn't vote for this. You never gave your consent. This isn't what the founders envisioned, and it is not what the future demands. Well, I've long been in favor of abolishing it. I think there is no institution in the United States that has such a high public standing and such a poor record of performance. By the way, this is Milton Friedman talking inside the anonymous video from Phoenix Dragon. This is historic footage from C-SPAN on an interview. All of it, very poor. It's done far more harm than good. My friends, we are all anonymous. But in order to give anniversary of our Republic of Anonymous, it is time we, the people, restore what was promised in 1776. He's listing a couple documents in his video. Anyway, let's see here. I found that really interesting, by the way. So on X, look for Ghostafee. It's at GHOSTAFEE. It might just be highly coincidental. Oh, wait a minute. Phoenix Dragon got another follow-up video here.
Why do you think you've been able to get away with not paying or filing your income taxes for so long?
First of all, I've not gotten away with anything. I'm not hiding from anyone. I'm simply asking the IRS to show me the laws that apparently require me to do these things, and they are suspiciously reticent to answer questions from me. And of course, there are millions of other people, many other organizations who have attempted to get answers. They act very suspiciously when asked to simply sit down at the table with the American people and discuss what their obligations are. Calling up a chair, they pull out a club. These liens that are reported against people by the government for tax liens are nothing more than allegations. They are not. They have never been determined by a neutral third party, and such as important to have one for the validity. If you ever get a notice of an audit or anything else, the first thing you should do is a Freedom of Information Act request for records that they're using to substantiate or justify the audit. There is nothing in the Internal Revenue Code that creates any such thing as an income tax evasion or crime. There's nothing in the code that allows IRS agents to seize property. The government is involved in judicial blackmail. The government knows that if it legally seizes somebody's property, that person doesn't have the funds and he can't even get a lawyer who can help him. I conducted investigations in the Title 18, the criminal code, the U.S. criminal code. And there, this is Jan Lindsay, the former FBI agent who's speaking right now. Statutes and the regulations are very specific as to what's violating the statute. In the Internal Revenue Code, Title 26, there's nothing specific in there. I mean, even the FBI is here in the IRS.
You have to understand that an agency which will unlawfully impose a tax that doesn't exist is not going to care if we, the people, don't know what our rights are. They're not going to tell us.
Americans just learned that the IRS was actually knowingly deceiving them. That would be enough for them to rise up and put a stop to it.
This small booklet includes the Constitution of the United States, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence. This is a document that every citizen should read. It's a document which freed an entire nation. This is the Internal Revenue Code, and this document, and the unlawful application of this document by the Internal Revenue Service has enslaved the nation that this document attempted to free.
Could you explain what is the relationship, here's my question, between the child trafficking adrenochrome manufacture, and how this is used to blackmail and to control, uh, you know, Wall Street and also politics. Okay, and judges. Let me start by giving the credit to the president very high marks. He did two executive orders, one in December 2017, one in January 2020, that are hugely significant on human trafficking. Trafficking, and particularly child trafficking, underlies every other great crime in this country. Children are now more valuable than drugs for criminal transactions. As best I can tell, toward 8 million children a year are being abducted. And every 8 million, toward 8 million children a year. In the United States, it's 800,000 to a million. All right? This is very serious stuff. And part of the problem is that wars create refugees. And if you look at Hillary Clinton, for example, the Haitian disaster, her friends were in there scooping up children.
Yes.
What?
Yes.
Say that. This is a matter of record. Now let me go back to the whole thing of child sacrifice, adrenochrome, and so forth. I didn't believe it myself, but Pizzagate woke me up. Is it Pizzagate or Common Pizza? All of that woke me up, and I started looking into it. And I connected with an author, a West Point graduate. That's our Sandhurst, I guess. A West Point graduate, Joaquin Hagopian. With my encouragement, he has written a book to which I wrote the foreword called, and this is free online. Everything I do is free online because my whole point is to try and raise public awareness and so forth. Your website, robertsteele.com. RobertDavidSteele.com. RobertDavidSteele.com. Somebody will put it in the links. Mark, if you put it in the links, it's our technical vision. Right. Basically, and they can read about this. This is not something that is a secret to them. If they want to go on to, they can do their research on your website. And I gotta give Amazon high credit because they haven't censored these books or these chapters.
Footnote, very important footnote. I cover a lot of different things, a lot of different angles. Because it's interesting. So, as I'm presenting this information, I have to implore you to use critical thinking and do your own research. That is a common theme of mine if you've ever watched any of my TikToks. Biggest thing I put in the beginning of most of my videos is a big bold caption that says, do your own research. I cannot stress that enough. Critical thinking is a must nowadays, especially with all the stuff going on. So with that said, continue this video. Because it can't be misinformation if you do your own research. It's misinformation if you don't do your research and you take it blindly. I am just a messenger. Nothing more.
Could you explain what is the relationship? Here's my question between the child trafficking, adrenochrome manufacture, and how this is used to blackmail, control, Wall Street and also politics. At least by giving the credit to the president very high marks. Did two executive orders, one in December 2017, one in January 2020, that are hugely significant on human trafficking. Human trafficking, and particularly child trafficking, underlies every other great crime in this country. It's more valuable than drugs for criminal transactions. As best I can tell, toward 8 million children a year are being abducted. How many? And every 8 million. Toward 8 million children a year. In the United States, it's 800,000 to a million. All right? This is very serious stuff. And part of the problem is that wars create refugees. And if you look at Hillary Clinton, for example, the Haitian disaster, her friends were in there scooping up children.
Yes.
What?
Yes, yes, yes.
Another footnote: if you look at what's going on in Gaza, that whole situation, they've got a bunch of refugees now because they're still being blown to bits.
Say that this is a matter of record.
Yeah.
To whole thing of child sacrifice, adrenochrome, and so forth. I didn't believe it myself. When Pizzagate me up, well, is it Pizzagate or Common Pizza? Well, started looking into it, and I connected with an author, a West Point graduate. That's our Sandhurst, I guess. A West Point graduate, Joaquin Javier. For the encouragement, he has written a book to which I wrote the foreword called "This is Free Online." Everything I do is free online because my whole point is to try and raise public awareness and so forth. Your website, robertsteele.com. Oh, RobertDavidSteele.com. RobertDavidSteele.com. Somebody will put it in the links. Mark, if you put it in the links, it's our technical vision. Right. Basically, and they can read about this. This is not something that is a secret to them. If they want to go on to, they can do their research on your website. And I gotta give Amazon high credit because they haven't censored these books or these chapters. They're also free online. I mean, people who know tinyurl.com just go to Veto Empire. Okay. That's the short URL. But under my encouragement, Joaquin has produced 34 chapters so far, with additional chapters to come. Each chapter documents pedophilia going back into time. This is not, I mean, the Aztecs and the Mayans were sacrificing children and drinking their blood, so forth. Drinking a child's blood without torturing the child. Own anti-aging device. Peter Thiel is on record in the newspaper saying he gets a transfusion of child's blood every day. All right. Now, the question is, what about torturing children? So we have pedophilia, which is child sex abuse. Then we have torturing children to create adrenochrome. And the easiest way I found to explain this to people is to think about how the Chinese torture dogs. They basically boil dogs alive. The reason they do that is because it changes the flavor of the meat. And what it's doing is it's pumping adrenaline from the tortured dog into the blood. And that's what's changing the flavor. Okay? I have never participated in a satanic ritual abuse act. I've never talked to anyone who has been present at a satanic ritual abuse act. Team Avapian has documented hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of links of people who have testified about all of this stuff, which includes things like forcing fetuses to be delivered and eaten on site as part of the ritual. Now, let me stop there and just say that Sidney Powell, I'm a huge fan of Sidney Powell, Mike Flynn's lawyer. I like to say that the only difference between Sidney Powell as a pit bull is that one wears burns. Okay, she is a monster, and I would like to see her be a Supreme Court justice because there's no one else in America that is standing up to crooked judges and crooked prosecutors. And by the way, crooked judges running children into pedophilia by taking them away from their parents, and they're running the elderly to their graves in order to strip them of their estate. And the way this works is the elder person is drugged up, then the sheriff takes them away, then the estate is sold, and the judge, the prosecutor, the sheriff, and the doctor all split the proceeds. Okay? Sidney Powell gave a speech recently at a university in which he talked about what was known to have been on the Weiner laptop, which had all of the Hillary Clinton and Ahmed stuff. And what she said was that what the New York police saw on that laptop caused them to vomit. Cannot overstate. That's a New York police officer. Yes, multiple officers. Right, actually, I love the New York police. Let's just say that again. That's a New York police officer who's seen a few things over the life of being a New York police officer. That's not a cozy job. That's not like a. What I'm trying to say here is two things. The first is before the FBI under Obama came in to confiscate the laptop and try to protect Clinton, the New York Police Department copied it. And the second thing I'm going to say is I'm quite confident the President of the United States of America knows all of this in detail. Neomycin and kanamycin, all of you go.
Okay. I'm gonna stop that one right there. I just found some other information out inadvertently. Something I'm gonna probably want to reproduce as an actual video. So I'm taking some screenshots. It's funny. They're allowing receipts to be posted, but yet it's subjective, I guess. Depends on what receipts are posting. Snapchat, yeah. Yeah. Anybody who knows anything about Snapchat, you wouldn't be using it. That's all I'm saying. I mean, I really haven't liked Snapchat from the beginning, so no harm, no foul on my part. You guys check out Alex Vacca, VACCA, or on X. His handle is let me just spell it out. ITSALEXVACCA. He's posting receipts on Zuck. It's funny. It's my interpretation that Facebook really got started as a troll site. If you watched his video, how he started, oh, and Grok gets in here. He said that Grok, the AI, he says the claims are largely true based on reports from TechCrunch, Wall Street Journal, Verge, and others. Facebook acquired Alvaro VPN in 2013 for less than 200 million. Forbes says it was 120. It was used as surveillance collecting data for 33 plus million members. TechCrunch shows 33 million installed by 2018, which shut down in 2019. ONAVO data informed that the 119 billion WhatsApp by Wall Street Journal BuzzFeed it enabled decrypting Snapchat traffic via man-in-the-middle attacks. Project Ghostbuster. No major unsupported elements. Yeah, here's a nice meme. It says it's from Zuck's perspective. It says, "Hey, fellow freedom lovers, can you believe what the Biden administration did to us? Ha ha ha! Nothing more than you already did, Zuck." And this feed is gold. I'm getting off track. Too much other shit going on here. Yeah, I gotta get off of that. All right, back to the regularly scheduled program. Hoping to tie this all together. I'm hoping to tie this all together.
You apply for a job. never hear back. Your resume uniquely filtered, not by a person, but by a prediction algorithm fed by your uniquely private life. Past employment, your social media, your race, your relationships. Then processed to make a decision whether you can afford to live. You search for chest pain symptoms at 2 a.m. The next day, an insurance company emails you about a specific plan tailored to you. You get pulled aside at an airport. No stated reason, you just matched a pattern. They're reading your shadow, the data you've shed, the gestures you've forgotten, and the correlations you didn't know existed. This isn't fiction. This reality is being constructed right now, and there's one group that's making this possible. They're called Palantir. A group that has quietly operated behind the scenes for years. And what they built isn't a system of raw surveillance. It's authorship, the ability to write your life before you live it. And what's being authored is something that will mark the rest of the 21st century. Something that will absolutely impact each and every person watching this video, no matter who you are and where you live. So, who is Palantir? Palantir is a publicly traded corporation that specializes in big data integration on the software level. But what does that mean? In layman terminology, Palantir focuses on the orchestration, organization, and implementation of data. A ton of the information behind the scenes that products and services need, with a focus on automating the decision-making processes with that existing data infrastructure. But how and where do they do this? They do this for corporate clientele such as JP Morgan, Wendy's, to public entities such as Britain's NHS, Norwegian Customs, Danish POL, Intel, Predictive Policing, all the way to ICE and the CIA in the United States. Product lines such as Palantir Gotham allow police departments to predict potential crime with data of citizens in a given community. They can even run probability for whether someone might have a mental health crisis. For militaries such as the IDF, Gotham can expand drone capability to be completely autonomous, controlled, operated, and executed by a machine learning algorithm. Palantir Foundry can automate logistics and make predictive outcomes in healthcare and supply chains, such as Britain's NHS. As we speak, Palantir is experiencing an unprecedented rise in market cap, growing by 23 times since 2023. They were founded by Peter Thiel, a billionaire venture capitalist and mega donor of the Republican Party, who broke campaign finance records
Footnote: during the recent LA riot, if anybody paying attention, their stock price jumped exponentially. And this video here was created after that happened, so if you go back and see the graph, well, maybe I could do it.
growing by 23 times since 2020.
You see the graph, that spike right there? That was when the military got involved in a civil conflict. Palantir is military technology. and is being deployed across the spectrum in civilian life. No deviation or correction as far as their AI models are concerned. So they have a hell of a proof of concept going. Just my perspective.
3. They were founded by Peter Thiel, a billionaire venture capitalist and mega donor of the Republican Party, who broke campaign finance records by donating a whopping
Another footnote, he's also a founding member of the PayPal Mafia. That's an interesting research and a rabbit hole for someone to dig into. How PayPal got started, how it became a monopoly, how they branched out, each one of the founding members, into the different aspects that we are now dealing with in everyday life. But you should really look into the PayPal Mafia rabbit hole and then tie it around with everything else. You'll definitely have an aha moment.
$15 million to J.D. Vance's 2022 Senate campaign. Thiel is also famous for pushing for fully private-owned cities, city-states entirely owned by corporations.
You would prefer the human race to endure, right? You're hesitating.
Yeah, well,
yes?
I don't know. I would
This is a long hesitation. This is a long hesitation.
There's so many questions implicit in this.
Should the human race survive?
Yes.
Okay.
But
the second major player is the eccentric CEO Alex Karp, an odd technology CEO who has remained in the shadows until recently.
To disrupt and make the institutions we partner with the very best in the world, and when it's necessary, to scare enemies and on occasion kill them.
A question emerges here. Amidst a very unstable technology market in the US, remained in the shadows until recently.
To disrupt and make the institutions we partner with the very best in the world, and when it's necessary, to scare enemies and on occasion kill them.
A question emerges here. Amidst a very unstable technology market in the US, an economy generally bearish at the prospect of new technology investment, how has Palantir quietly grown by a seismic 23 times? Palantir didn't grow overnight, but the acceleration they are experiencing seemingly did. An acceleration fueled by robbery in plain sight. A heist that dwarfs anything in history. Yet, it's important to note the past 40 years of neoliberalism can be described as a heist in general, an unprecedented seismic extraction of wealth from normal, day-to-day working-class people, to the point where the rich have never accumulated more wealth compared to the rest of society in human history. But we all know this. Many aren't surprised that the top 10% own 93% of the entire US stock market, that the top 1% own over 30% of all wealth in the US. Journalists, economists, and even the rare politician have warned us for decades that this level of extraction is occurring. But without outright crippling society to the point of economic collapse, what else is there to take? Turns out, a lot more. And it's far more powerful and substantial than money could buy.
Now to President Trump and Elon Musk's latest moves to reshape the federal government. The top Social Security official stepped down after Musk's team requested access to sensitive personal data about millions of Americans. Senior political correspondent Rachel Scott is tracking it from Mar-a-Lago.
After the 2025 presidential election, the Trump administration announced the creation of DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, with the official aim to cut, quote, fraud, waste, and abuse in the public sector. Headed by Elon Musk, and with ex-employees of Palantir, Musk made an official goal of cutting $2 trillion in what he claimed was identifiable waste. In actuality, the final sum expected to be cut is $160 billion, with official estimates showing that Doge's total operational cost to be around $130 billion itself. And according to a report from Yale's The Budget Lab, the measures to cut various government agencies is expected to create a net loss of $300 to $500 billion over the next decade. And despite this has been the Trump administration's greatest success. That's because Doge is a lie. The point was never to cut fraud, waste, and abuse. It's a facade for an ambition much greater and far more consequential. In February of 2025, members of Doge gained root access to a plethora of government IT systems, such as the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and the U.S. Agency for International Development. But the real crucial one is the Social Security Administration, harboring one of the most sensitive databases in the United States. Birth dates, historical addresses, employment history, financial records of every single American. It doesn't take a genius to understand what is going on here, but what sells the terrifying endgame is the transparent, illegal nature of this. Federal courts have blocked Doge from entering these databases after it was already done. But that's the point. The repercussions do not matter. Even if courts find Doge and the Trump administration in judicial contempt for illegally accessing federal databases, the data has already been siphoned. In April of 2025, Judge Ellen Hollander denied Doge access due to concerns around privacy and the Fourth Amendment, along with the Fair Privacy Act, a 1974 law that requires explicit protection of personal data unless there is immediate urgency in law enforcement functions. Which, as the courts reflected, there clearly is zero urgency to combat crime that would necessitate unfettered access to the Social Security Administration's database. Yet, in June of 2025, in an absolutely contradictory and wild ruling, the Supreme Court ruled that the Trump administration had authority to executively access federal databases at will. The only 3 liberal judges dissented. The behavior here is what is particularly dangerous, to execute without legal process, without genuine consultation of the law. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson voiced concern regarding the Trump administration's legal defense. In essence, the urgency underlying the government's stay application is the mere fact that it cannot be bothered to wait for the litigation process to play out before proceeding as it wishes. A concerning question here remains. Is this naive hubris of the Trump administration a lack of concern due to Trump's evasion of legal repercussions, or is this done with a strategic plan of assurance that the law will not be applied to them after the fact? That the few democratic judicial procedures in the US will be null and void by the time justice could ever be served? We don't know the answer. What we do know is that all our collective, sensitive data is now out in the wild, unbeknownst to us, but not without emerging clues. In May of 2025, a New York Times article highlighted the Trump administration's plan to create a centralized database on every single American citizen. Palantir is set to lead the charge. Little is known how this database will be constructed, what technical data will exactly be used. But we do know Palantir representatives have been in contact with 2 big American agencies, the Social Security Administration and the Internal Revenue Service, who head the 2 most important government databases in the country.
A few weeks ago at Singularity University in Palo Alto, I learned something that absolutely blew my mind and has me reevaluating my life. I'd like to share that with you.
In the country. It's important to note how information systems work. One might argue that our data is already in a specific state database, that the entirety of our information is already available to the state at large. This framing is incorrect. It presupposes that the state is a single entity, able to executively access specific data at will. Information systems are much more fragmented, and that's on purpose. The Social Security Administration will not have access to the same data as the Department of Health and Human Services. It's the centralization that changes everything, and the horror of this conundrum is twofold. The state now has unfettered access, a single executive database to pull from. And now, it's not just the state. A third party and private entity, Palantir, owns the keys.
I have given it to some, but it goes to very special people, and I thought I'd give it to Elon as a presentation from our country. Thank you. Thank you, Elon.
Thank you.
Take care of yourself.
All of this was under the political banner of efficiency. Trump's administration wanted to stop fraud, waste, and abuse by eliminating information silos through the process of, quote, removing unnecessary barriers to federal employees accessing government data and promoting interagency data sharing are important steps towards eliminating bureaucratic duplication and inefficiency while enhancing the government's ability to detect overpayments and fraud. The efficiency was made possible by tearing down the legal, privacy, and data protections in place to protect American citizens from third parties. And the Trump administration handed the keys of our most sensitive data to one of the most sophisticated data organizations in the world. But you may ask, for those of us around the world, for those of us who don't care about data integrity, what does this mean for us? Well, it means everything, because everything is at stake. Information is a currency far greater than the dollar or any tangible asset. It allows for the prediction of that very everything. And Alex Karp understands this.
With them being the winner of the world, because if they're winning, it means other people are losing. What do you think of that?
I don't think in win-lose. I think in domination.
Do you know who Palantir is?
I do.
Do you think that Palantir has ever scraped data from Facebook?
Senator, I'm not aware of that.
We've entered what theorist Shoshana Zuboff calls surveillance capitalism, an economic system that doesn't extract value from your labor, but from your behavior itself. Every search, pause, purchase becomes raw material for algorithms that predict and modify what you will do next. And it's a surplus you give out freely, while scrolling social media, visiting web pages, much of your digital life. This might seem overly theoretical and dramatic in nature, but this model of extraction is right here. Bruce Schneier, a cryptographer, computer scientist, and author, coined it perfectly. Surveillance is the business model of the internet. We build systems that spy on people in exchange for services. Corporations call it marketing. When immigration data gets processed, Palantir and the state is not just tracking individuals, they're modeling migration patterns to engineer policy responses. When health records get analyzed, they're not predicting individual outcomes, they're optimizing population health according to invisible, computerized priorities. You aren't just being watched, you're being predicted, and prediction becomes policy before you know the game has started. Another reason why data is so incredibly powerful in the hands of organizations with vast computational power is the sheer speed and velocity it's able to capture behavior, to predict, to fundamentally own. Paul Virilio, a theorist and military historian, is also particularly relevant here. In the 1970s, Virilio coined the term dromology, relating to the Greek word dromos, which roughly means race. Dromology can be seen as a way to understand the contemporary relationship with society and speed. Virilio sees speed as a fundamental mechanism of power and a driving force in technological growth. In the context of modern warfare, pure strategy no longer wins, superior logistics do. From the Wehrmacht's strategy of blitzkrieg to the United States' ability to reach A to B in the supply chain. In the case of domestic society, telegraph to the telephone, to advanced computation and digital communications. Yet, to Virilio, there's side effects. Speed confuses. It creates what Virilio calls the tyranny of real time, a type of sociology that minimizes the geographic, physical existence of life by way of rapid communications, digitalization, and processing power, which then can lead to instability, upheavals, and even the erosion of democracy by way of a cult of technocratic efficiency. Just through the speed of modern work and technological innovation, our ethics, the sublime humanity we hold, tends to get tossed to the wayside. Virilio was concerned about an emerging ideology of technological determinism and supremacy, the belief that technology's evolution, its ability to innovate, was enough to legitimize itself, that any result from technological growth is inherent, perhaps not proper, nor desirable, but inevitable, and we have no say. Does that sound familiar right now?
I think AI will probably, most likely sort of lead to the end of the world, but in the meantime, there will be great companies created with serious machine learning.
Palantir embodies this. It may seem that Palantir's extreme centralization of information is reckless. Arrogant executives foaming at the mouth at new quarterly increases and a bump in stock price. But this underscores the very intentional, real power grab that is happening, and the goal is not merely financial in nature. Palantir's ability to harness the power of speed, its velocity of growth, and information capabilities is what makes this a horrifying prospect. The effect of this is the evisceration of democratic procedure, expectations of privacy. This creates an effect similar to what Foucault deemed as panopticism, the effect of surveillance, normalizing of an authority that watches to the extent you regulate yourself. It's not just the mass collection of data of many across the globe, but the quiet acceptance, creeping normalization, the feeling of inevitability, that our entire DNA can be sequenced remotely, our behaviors, mental patterns, synthesized and predicted. Private health insurers and/or state healthcare systems may have access to nearly all of your data and have the power to make predictions on health outcomes. They may deny your care based upon specific behaviors, your whereabouts, and weekend activities. Marketers can target individuals with accuracy we've never seen, based upon biological makeup, your spending habits. With your data becoming centralized in a master database, combined with the rise of self-trained AI and neural networks, political corruption, and administrations that willingly sacrifice public commons in favor of capital, the disturbing possibilities are endless. But not all is lost. We create new data every day, and much of it is under our control. While not all, we have ownership and agency around how and when much of that data is shed. On the front of a state-sponsored centralized database, explicit political pressure is about all we can do. This is a unique dilemma not even security researchers would have predicted. This is relatively new territory. It must be conveyed as a crisis alongside and equal to issues such as climate change, money, and politics, which it absolutely is. There's also a lot we can do individually to combat the peripheral data collected by private, large-scale tech platforms, such as social media, online shopping, and general computer use. While this goes beyond the full scope of the video, we can limit our footprint. avoiding the gold mine we create for corporations that are contrary to normal people's existence, using open source software, refusing to use tech platforms that make you the center product, or, if you must, poison their data sets. Never use real names, give false addresses, make their data completely inoperable. As individuals, we can still control what data private entities collect from us. In theory, we can destroy the very fabric that makes corporations such as Google profitable. What is more difficult is a state-ran, centralized database, though. Digital hygiene and individual habits don't equally apply here. There will need to be collective pressure, and we will have to work together. But it's up to us, whether or not we will approach these challenges with a cynical nihilism, a laziness that accepts defeat before the race has finished. Or we can move forward with the courage and understanding that we still fundamentally control the keys. Thank you all for watching and making it to the end. I have a request. These videos are incredibly time-consuming and expensive to make, and I couldn't do it without the support over on Patreon. If you enjoyed this video, consider pledging just a few dollars a month. While we're here, I want to also give an extra special shout out to Jay Roberts and Cedric Watman. You two have gone above and beyond, and I appreciate it immensely. For everyone else, I hope to see you all in the next.
Why is Israeli surveillance technology
This video here, fiction play, goes to configure geopolitical situation. Because there are organizations, not throwing anyone particular under the bus, who do not know or understand what boundaries are. And seriously, in my opinion, lack ethics.
Why is Israeli surveillance technology being used to hack your phone? Let's find out. I'm Nick Hanna, criminal lawyer, and welcome to the first episode of The What and the Why. On this channel, I'll break down some of the most important criminal justice issues that you won't hear about in the mainstream media. Today, I'm going to take a deep dive into the Israeli digital intelligence giant Cellebrite and explain how its technology is being used on a mass scale by police and government agencies in Australia and around the world. Now you might be asking, okay, is this just about the cops getting into the phones of criminals? If so, what's the big deal? Well, in this video, I'm going to explain why there's a whole lot more to the story and how the use of Cellebrite technology in Australia raises serious privacy concerns for all of us. I'm going to start by looking at the darker side of Cellebrite that most people don't know about. The company's extremely close ties with the Israeli military, particularly the infamous cyber warfare unit 8200, as well as the assistance it's provided to repressive regimes around the globe. Then I'm going to look at how insanely advanced and far-reaching Cellebrite surveillance capabilities are, and how it can download all of your phone and social media data, as well as a ton of information about you that you wouldn't even know exists. After that, I'm going to explain how Cellebrite products are being used by law enforcement and other government agencies on a large scale, with very few restrictions and no real oversight. I'll show
Again, I'm going to reiterate where all this technocracy shit's going. It's all part of a bigger plan. It's connected. Thing is, though, everybody's focused on what's over here. And I'm going to quote somebody else's quote. The pedophile in chief, end quote. And they're not realizing, or maybe they are, I don't know. But their focus isn't where it needs to be. In my opinion. That's just smoke and mirrors and diversion. The bigger issue is the technocracy. And how it intertwines, yeah, okay, I get maybe if they're going down that avenue. But that's only a side effect. That's a Band-Aid. That's not even pills, it's penicillin. I'm going to go back to the video because I'm going to get frustrated and probably say something that I shouldn't say. Out of spite and a little bit of pissed off anger.
how it's not just being used to download the phones of criminals, but also victims and witnesses of crime and countless innocent people. Finally, I'm going to talk about what happens with all of this highly sensitive data that's being downloaded from our phones. In doing so, I'll show you why there's a real risk that Cellebrite may be able to access our data and why that's something we should all be worried about. So let's start by talking a bit about the company itself. Cellebrite is an Israeli surveillance company that sells software for the collection and analysis of digital data. It's best known for its ability to hack mobile phones, but that's just one of many products it offers. Cellebrite has thousands of clients across the globe, including law enforcement, spy agencies, foreign militaries, and private corporations. Cellebrite's headquarters are located just outside Tel Aviv, but it has offices around the world, including here in Australia. On its website, the company says that its core values are personal privacy, public safety, transparency, and respect for individual rights. But there's some good reasons to doubt this claim. For starters, Cellebrite has very close ties with the Israeli military, which is not exactly known for its respect for human rights. Until recently, the company has been run by its long-term CEO, Yossi Carmel, who was formerly a lieutenant colonel in the elite Israeli paratrooper brigade, and after that held a senior position in the Israeli Ministry of Defense. In 2021, Carmel admitted that most Cellebrite employees come from the infamous Israeli Unit 8200 or similar units. Now, to understand why that's so important, we need to talk a bit about Unit 8200. Unit 8200 is the main intelligence and cyber warfare unit of the Israeli military. Historically, its primary goal has been the mass surveillance of Palestinians and the populations in neighboring Arab countries. To give you an idea of what Unit 8200 gets up to, in 2014, a few dozen reservists from the unit published an open letter to the Israeli government in which they refused to continue their service due to the unit's mass surveillance and persecution of innocent Palestinians. In another open letter published at around the same time, a Unit 8200 whistleblower described how the unit collects highly sensitive personal information from Palestinian civilians, like if they're a closet homosexual, they're cheating on their wife, or they're in need of urgent medical treatment, and then use that information to blackmail them into becoming informants. Here is one of the 8,200 whistleblowers being interviewed in 2014.
The problem is that the goal of what the unit does in regards with Palestinians is not just self-defense, it's upholding a military regime. It means to oppress the population, it means to weaken the political system of the Palestinians so that they can't improve their situation, so that the military regime continues.
Over time, Unit 8,200's capabilities have expanded and is now considered to be one of the foremost intelligence agencies in the world. It operates out of the Urim base in the Negev Desert, one of the most powerful intelligence gathering sites on the planet. From there, it monitors phone calls and electronic communications throughout the Middle East, Europe, Africa, and Asia. It is also reported to run covert listening posts in Israeli embassies abroad and is known to cooperate closely with the USA's National Security Agency. So, what does Unit 8,200 do with all of this data that it collects? Well, much of that is of course kept under wraps, but one of the more chilling examples that was exposed by an Israeli media outlet last year is the artificial intelligence targeting system known as Lavender. Lavender, which was developed by Unit 8,200, is an AI system that processes all of the phone and other data the unit has collected and then uses it to create lists of people in Gaza to be killed by the Israeli military. Israeli sources have disclosed how there is minimal human oversight of the system, and more concerningly, how the Israeli army pre-authorizes allowances for the estimated number of civilians who can be killed in each strike, as is explained in this video published by Vox.
Sources told reporters that for every junior Hamas operative that Lavender marked, it was permissible to kill up to 15 or 20 civilians, but also that for some targets, the number of permissible civilian casualties was as high as 300.
The cyber and other military operations that 8,200 has been involved in have not just been directed against Palestinians, but also foreign states including Syria, Lebanon, and Iran. For example, 8,200 played a key role in the planning of Israel's unilateral military strikes against Iran last month, which left hundreds of Iranians dead. Unit 8,200 is also believed to have played a key role in the pager attacks in Lebanon last September, when Israel simultaneously detonated thousands of explosive devices it had concealed inside pagers, killing and maiming thousands of Lebanese citizens, both Hezbollah fighters and civilians, including numerous children. The attack was widely condemned by human rights experts as violating international law, and even former CIA Director Leon Panetta described it as a form of terrorism.
Is it terrorism?
I don't think there's any question that it's a form of terrorism.
I was in South Beirut during the pager attack, and I remember the chaos on the streets and the feeling of terror that swept across the city. Now you might think that, with 8,200's track record, Cellebrite might try to distance itself from the unit for PR reasons. Well, that's definitely not the case. In fact, Cellebrite openly promotes the fact that it's made up of Unit 8,200 veterans as one of its key selling points. For example, as you can see in this presentation for investors, Cellebrite boasts about having world-class talent from the unit, and that this gives the company a competitive advantage by generating unmatched capabilities. And it's not just low-level employees who are ex-Israeli intelligence, but many people who occupy senior positions in the company. For example, the company's long-standing CFO, Dana Gerner, is a Unit 8,200 veteran, a fact which she openly discloses on her LinkedIn page. Gerner is also a director of Cellebrite's local branch, Cellebrite Australia, which is based in Canberra. Now, this relationship between Cellebrite and former 8,200 members has been the subject of some excellent reporting, including by the Jewish Australian journalist Anthony Lowenstein, who authored a very important book called The Palestine Laboratory. But what hasn't been talked about a lot is the ongoing relationship between Cellebrite and the Israeli army. Because you might be thinking, okay, sure, Cellebrite is full of former 8,200 hackers who have a shady past, but these guys might have put that chapter behind them, and now they're just living like normal civilians or tech bros. Well, it's important to understand that like all soldiers who have served in the Israeli military, 8,200 veterans must return for compulsory service as reserves each year. The length of this annual service duty used to be up to 3 weeks, but it's been significantly extended during Israel's war on Gaza over the past 20 months. So there is this ongoing exchange of information between the unit's current and former members, which, as Forbes reported in a glowing article about Unit 8,200 in 2015, allows the unit's veterans to get a peek into the latest technology being developed by their younger successors. And let's be clear about what kind of technology this is. It's technology that is used for mass surveillance in the West Bank, mass killing in Gaza, and for cyber warfare in neighboring countries. Beyond this overlap between the company and Israeli intelligence personnel, Cellebrite appears to be actively supporting the Israeli army as it carries out its brutal offensive in Gaza, which is considered to be a genocide by most human rights organizations and genocide scholars. In the early days of Israel's military onslaught in Gaza, Cellebrite admitted on Instagram how proud it is to stand beside its IDF soldiers and how they've dispatched vital equipment, food, mobile chargers, and clothing to the front lines. There are 2 photos from this post that I want to show you. In the first shot, you can see soldiers with a box of goodies gifted by Cellebrite. In the second shot, you can see armed soldiers who either appear to be in Gaza or getting ready to invade Gaza, wearing t-shirts donated by Cellebrite emblazoned with the company's slogan, "Doing Good." Yes, doing good. In November 2023, when Israel's ground offensive in Gaza was in full effect, then CEO Yossi Carmel said that those on the front line are risking their lives for the country. Our mission is to take care of economic security during the war and the day after. More importantly though, he went on to say that Cellebrite had done a lot to assist Israeli law enforcement and special operations in times of crisis, but said he couldn't discuss this in detail. Now, the precise nature of Cellebrite's involvement in Gaza is of course shrouded in secrecy. We know that the Israeli army is using it to crack the phones of Palestinians it takes captive in the besieged enclave. And it's also been reported in the Israeli military that Cellebrite's received funding from the Pentagon to develop a product to identify, map and expose what it describes as Hamas terrorists, which, as we've seen over the last 20 months, can mean anyone from journalists to doctors, bakers, and even school children. But beyond this, we're really in the dark about Cellebrite's role in Gaza. Apart from Gaza, Cellebrite also plays an important role in the military occupation of the West Bank. For example, the Israeli army uses the company's software to hack the phones that it seizes not only from Palestinians, but also countless foreign peace activists and journalists there. This use of Cellebrite technology is of course unlawful in circumstances where Israel's occupation of the Palestinian territories itself is unlawful, as was recently confirmed by the International Court of Justice in its advisory opinion handed down in July last year. Beyond Palestine, human rights groups have long accused Cellebrite of aiding various authoritarian governments around the world. In 2016, it was revealed that the Bahraini regime, which is one of the worst human rights records in the world, was a client of Cellebrite and had used its technology to download the phone of a blogger who had reportedly been arrested and tortured simply for speaking out against human rights abuses there. In 2017, Cellebrite was used against Reuters journalists in Myanmar who were charged with publishing evidence of a massacre of Rohingya people. In 2021, the Israeli media outlet Haaretz published an article claiming that Cellebrite was being used by the Bangladeshi paramilitary unit, the Rapid Action Battalion, which is accused of extrajudicial killings and torture of hundreds of civilians. In the same year, the Committee to Protect Journalists documented the use of Cellebrite in Botswana to examine the phones of journalists who had been arrested in relation to Facebook posts about COVID-19. And these are just 4 of countless examples of Cellebrite being allegedly used by regimes with appalling human rights records. Other notable Cellebrite clients include the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Georgia. In the West, Cellebrite products were also used in ways that many would find very controversial. For example, in the USA, some universities have been accused of using Cellebrite technology as part of their crackdown on students engaging in peaceful pro-Palestine activities on campus. Cellebrite is also used extensively by US Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, which perhaps explain why the company's share price hit an all-time high on the day after the election victory of Donald Trump, who had campaigned on an aggressively anti-immigration platform. And this is nothing new really, as Cellebrite has been openly promoting its tools to Western governments for use against asylum seekers since at least 2019. So I think that's enough for you to get an idea about the type of company that Cellebrite is. Now I want to talk a bit about what Cellebrite technology can do. Cellebrite offers a range of products for accessing and analyzing digital data. It's best known for its Universal Forensic Extraction Device, or UFED, which is the product used to access electronic devices and download their data. UFED can be used on a range of devices, including tablets, computers, USB drives, and SIM cards. But it's most commonly used on mobile phones, and that's what I'm going to focus on in this video. UFED's most important feature is its ability to get into locked phones, even if they're passcode protected. Once UFED has cracked the passcode on your phone, it can start downloading the data on it. Now, what kind of data does it download? Well, the short answer is everything. All of your text messages, emails, photos, videos, call logs, contacts, Google searches, map searches, health data, everything. And when I say text messages, I'm not just talking about SMS. UFED downloads the chats that are stored on your phone from all of your messaging apps, even the encrypted ones like WhatsApp, Signal, Telegram, and Threema. And it doesn't just get the messages you've got stored on your phone, but can often also recover messages you've deleted. Importantly, UFED also downloads all of the metadata on your phone, which is the data about the data. Let's take your camera roll, for example. Every phone and video on your phone contains a lot of additional info, like the date and time it was taken, whether it was taken with your phone or someone else's, and if you've got your location services turned on, which most people do, your GPS coordinates at the time it was taken. Location data is particularly important because most of your apps save this data, and so your phone can usually show where you are at all times. One of the newer and lesser known features of UFED is its ability to download the hidden data on your phone that you can't see yourself and you probably didn't even know was saved on your phone. For example, every iPhone that uses iOS 15 or later stores what's called biome files, which can reveal an insane amount of info about your everyday life. There's more than 130 categories of biome files, but some of the main ones include the histories of every app you've used at any given time, every Wi-Fi network and Bluetooth device you've connected to, every time your phone was locked and unlocked, every time you've put it in airplane mode, every notification you've received, and all of your Siri usage. Now, some of this data might seem pretty trivial, but it can actually reveal extremely important info about you and your daily activities. To illustrate the point, let's look at the recent high-profile murder retrial of Karen Read in the US. Karen Read was accused of murdering her boyfriend, and one of the main factual issues in dispute at the trial was where her boyfriend had died. The prosecution argued that Ms. Read had killed her boyfriend outside the home of one of his mates, whereas her lawyers had claimed he could have been killed inside the house. Relevantly, the death happened in the middle of winter in Massachusetts, and the prosecution used evidence of the low temperature of the battery of the deceased's iPhone, which had been downloaded by UFED, to support their theory that he could have been outside in the cold when he was killed. Here is Celebrite expert Ian Whiffen giving evidence at the trial.
Is there another subject that you looked at, that you analyzed, in order to reach a conclusion about the time and location of John O'Keefe's cell phone over the night of January 29, 2022?
Yes, the next one is battery temperature.
Can you explain a little bit of background on this before you start the slides?
So again, we have a temperature sensor built in within the phone, monitoring for if the battery temperature increases too high and becomes a danger, or if the temperature gets too low and becomes an issue. So it constantly monitors the temperature of the battery and records that information in the Knowledge C database.
This same Celebrite expert gave evidence at the trial about how iPhones also record every time they are in pocket state, which is basically when the phone's cameras are blocked, usually because it's in your pocket. The prosecution used this pocket state data in combination with the location data and battery temperature to try to show precisely where Mr. O'Keefe was at the time of his death. So it's pretty crazy when you think about all of the kinds of data that can be downloaded using UFED. And it's even crazier to think that this is just one of several products that Celebrite offers. Now, there's not enough time to go through all of Celebrite's other products in as much detail, but I just want to give you an overview of some of the main ones. UFED Cloud is like UFED, but for your data that's stored in the cloud. This commonly includes all of your social media data, your phone backups, and your cloud storage accounts like Apple iCloud and Dropbox. It also includes sensitive data that some apps store on the cloud instead of on your phone, like all of your Uber activity and your online purchases. Celebrite Endpoint Inspector is a product that allows the remote collection of data from phones, computers, and other devices. This is important because, unlike UFED, which requires the target's device to be connected to the physical UFED, Endpoint Inspector can extract the data from the device even if it's on the other side of the world. The product is marketed to corporations to monitor their employees' activities at the office or when they're working from home. But who knows whether government agencies are also using this remote extraction technology? Celebrite Pathfinder is a product that takes all of the data that is downloaded using other Celebrite products and then uses AI to analyze it in a fraction of the time that it would take humans to do. For example, in a matter of minutes, it scours all of your photos, videos, texts, and social media to reveal your interactions with certain people, your movements, and your activities. So that's an overview of the main products that Celebrite currently offers. but it's important to remember that the hacking capabilities of this company are constantly evolving. Cellebrite invests very heavily in research and development, which can be spearheaded by the ongoing recruitment of the best and brightest of elite Israeli intelligence units like 8200. In addition, the company acquires other cybersecurity companies so that it can take their IP and use it to expand Cellebrite's surveillance capacity. A very recent example of this is Cellebrite's $200 million purchase of the US startup Corellium, which specializes in hacking phones via different means. Corellium is no stranger to controversy itself, having reportedly offered its product to companies with appalling human rights records, such as the Israeli corporation NSO Group, which is responsible for the infamous Pegasus spyware that was used by repressive regimes around the world against journalists and human rights activists. It's worth mentioning that, like Cellebrite, NSO Group recruits almost exclusively from Israeli intelligence units, including 8200, for its research team. Okay, so now it's time to talk about the really problematic ways that Cellebrite technology is used in Australia. Before I get into the detail, I just want to explain a basic principle that the government at least usually pays lip service to when making laws that infringe upon our privacy. It's long been recognised that there is this tension between, on the one hand, the public interest in the police being able to have the tools they need to fight crime, and, on the other hand, the interests of people in having their privacy and civil liberties protected. Lawmakers claim that they try to strike the right balance between these two competing interests, and the way that they normally do this is by strictly regulating the use of powers that undermine our privacy, and by creating mechanisms for external oversight and review of these powers. So let's take phone tapping as an example. Intercepting someone's phone calls without them knowing is obviously a highly invasive form of surveillance, and it's for this reason that it's highly regulated. For example, only a handful of agencies are allowed to do it. They generally need a warrant first, and they can only get a warrant in fairly limited circumstances. On top of that, each year the Federal Attorney General publishes a report about telephone interception, which sets out info about the extent of phone tapping in Australia and how effective it's been. This kind of accountability is vital because it's the only way to know if these powers are being abused and if they're actually getting results. So with that principle in mind, let's get back to Cellebrite. It's difficult to think of anything more invasive than the downloading of your mobile phone. I mean, after all, your phone is usually where the most sensitive info about you and your private life is stored. Cellebrite products can get all of that info and more, and so you'd think that their use in Australia would be subject to the most stringent restrictions and oversight, right? Well, that's not the case at all. In fact, the way that Cellebrite products are used in this country raises some serious concerns for our privacy and civil liberties, and that's what I'm going to explore now. For starters, Cellebrite products are used by a wide range of government agencies, and not just law enforcement. At the federal level, there have been 171 contracts between Cellebrite and various government agencies since 2011. These agencies have included the AFP, the Department of Defense, the Department of Home Affairs, ASIC, the ATO, and more. One of the more controversial contracts is that with Services Australia, which allows Centrelink to use Cellebrite technology in investigations of people suspected of making false claims for Social Security. Another controversial contract is that with the Sports Integrity Unit, formerly known as the Australian Sports Anti-Doping Authority, which has used Cellebrite technology to investigate the use by athletes of performance-enhancing drugs. Now, it's important to understand that these are just the federal agencies that have contracts with Cellebrite, and not all of the agencies who use Cellebrite technology. For example, in 2023, Services Australia admitted that it had shared Cellebrite's phone hacking technology with the Department of Education, as well as other unnamed agencies. We don't know which other agencies are using Cellebrite products, and that's part of the problem. The same problem exists at the state and territory level, where even less is known about the use of Cellebrite technology. We know that Cellebrite has contracts with at least some state police forces, as well as other investigative bodies like the New South Wales Independent Commission Against Corruption. But we don't know whether any of these state agencies are sharing Cellebrite technology with other state agencies, and in what circumstances. Something interesting I learned when I was doing research for this story is that the Australian government is not only a client of Cellebrite, but it also pushes Cellebrite onto other countries. People familiar with the geopolitics of this region might know that the Australian government wields a lot of influence over some of our smaller neighbours. And one of the ways that this manifests is with policing. The Australian Federal Police has a big say in how the police forces of our neighbouring countries operate. And in the last few years, the Australian government has provided Cellebrite products to police forces in countries including Vanuatu, Papua New Guinea, and possibly the Solomon Islands. The AFP also provides Cellebrite training to these and other Pacific nations. Okay, so now that you know some of the agencies using Cellebrite technology, let's talk about the way they're using it. For me, this is one of the most important aspects of the story, yet it's something that most people don't know about. Why is it so important? Because there are very few, if any, known restrictions on the use of Cellebrite tools by these agencies, and this has resulted in mobile phones being hacked on a large scale in this country. To illustrate the point, I'm going to focus on the New South Wales Police Force, because that's the agency that I deal with most as a criminal lawyer based in Sydney. In New South Wales, none of the restrictions that apply to other police powers to protect people's privacy and civil liberties apply to the use of Cellebrite technology. For instance, the cops generally need a warrant if they want to do things like search your home, tap your phone, or install a listening device in your car to secretly record the conversations you have with people. To get these warrants, the cops need to go to an independent authority, like a judge or a magistrate, and present some evidence justifying the warrant being issued. What this evidence needs to prove depends on the warrant being requested, but it basically requires the cops to show they've got a good reason for the request. For example, if the cops are applying for a warrant to search your house, they need to demonstrate that they've got reasonable grounds to believe that they'll find the evidence they're looking for at your house. Now look, I don't want to pretend that the system is perfect, and there are plenty of critics who argue that these warrants are given out too easily, but at least it's something. It provides some independent oversight and it deters cops from making dodgy applications for warrants. Now when it comes to Cellebrite, there is no legislation in New South Wales, or for that matter, in any Australian jurisdiction, that requires the police to get a warrant to search your phone. And from experience, I can tell you that the cops take the view that if they get their hands on your phone, they can Cellebrite it, without approval from anyone. So how can they get your phone? Well, there are several ways. One is if you've been arrested for whatever reason. In that situation, the police can seize your phone without a warrant if they reasonably suspect that it will provide evidence of the commission of any offence, regardless of how trivial it is. But even if you're not under arrest, the police have the power to take your phone without a warrant in various situations. For example, the police have the power to stop and search you and your car without a warrant when they have reasonable grounds to suspect that you're in possession of a prohibited drug. Now, it's important to understand that there's no minimum quantity of the drug. So if the cops suspect that you've got even just a tiny amount of weed or coke on you, they can search you. And once they search you, they can seize your phone if they reasonably suspect it might provide evidence of what they call a relevant offence, which covers most crimes. An even easier way for the police to get your phone is if they do it with your consent. Now you might be asking, why would anyone agree to give up their phone to the police? Well, it actually happens a lot. You see, most people don't know their rights and they're intimidated by the police. They think that anything a police officer asks them to do, they have to do. And a lot of cops know this and take advantage of it. Now I should add that some defence lawyers in Australia have tried to challenge the status quo, and they've argued that the police actually do need a search warrant to Cellebrite your phone. In doing so, they've relied on a 2014 case from the United States called Riley versus California. In Riley, the US Supreme Court held that the police do generally need a search warrant to search a mobile phone. One of the main reasons for its decision was its finding that searching a phone is more akin to searching someone's house, which you need a warrant for, than searching their person, which you don't need a warrant for. In fact, the court found that searching someone's phone can be even more intrusive than searching their home. Now, if this argument made sense back in 2014, it makes a lot more sense in 2025, given how far the technology has evolved since then. Our phones now hold a lot more sensitive data than they did a decade ago, and with the help of Cellebrite, the police now have the ability to download all of it. But unfortunately, these legal challenges in Australia have been unsuccessful, and the position remains that the police don't need a warrant to Cellebrite your phone. And it's important to add that in my experience, a lot of cops download phones as standard practice, regardless of how trivial the case is and whether they actually think it's going to help their investigation. Now, in some cases, I've been able to persuade the police not to Cellebrite a client's phone, but it's usually up to the goodwill of the individual officer, and that's something we don't always see a lot of. The result of all of this is that the police are downloading mobile phones at an alarming rate in this state. Now, we don't actually know how many phones New South Wales police are Cellebriting each year, because they're not required to report this, but we know from anecdotal evidence that it's massive. To give you an idea, just with my practice, each year I receive dozens of Cellebrite reports of phones that have been downloaded, and I'm just one criminal lawyer of thousands in this state. The other day, I spoke with a colleague who had recently cross-examined an officer at a hearing. The officer gave evidence that she downloads about 20 mobile phones per week, and that's just one police officer in one police station. There are more than 400 police stations in New South Wales alone. So I don't think it's far-fetched to estimate that the New South Wales Police Force is downloading tens of thousands of phones each year. And that's just one agency in one state. Just imagine what the number is nationwide. Now, some of you might be thinking, okay, but the police are only doing this to criminals, right? So who cares? Well, the first thing to remember is that not everyone who the police stop and search ends up being charged. And not everyone who is charged ends up being found guilty. A large number of my clients who've had their phones celebrated end up walking free. Another important thing to know is that the police also regularly celebrate the phones of victims and witnesses of crimes. I see this especially in cases involving allegations of sexual assault, where the police will download the complainant's phone to get the messages they exchange with the accused or with their friends about the incident. Now, plenty of times the messages are relevant and definitely should be disclosed to the defense. But there are real issues with the way the police go about it sometimes. Firstly, by using Cellebrite's UFED, the police don't just download the relevant messages from the complainant's phone, but all of the data. Secondly, the police will then often provide the defense with a copy of the entire download of the complainant's phone. Now again, that's helpful for us defense lawyers because it can contain relevant information. But the truth is the vast majority of the data is completely irrelevant and often very private. An example of this happening was in the high-profile sexual assault prosecution of Bruce Lehman a few years ago. In that case, the Australian Federal Police provided the entire Cellebrite download of Brittany Higgins' phone, which even included her counselling notes, to Lehman's lawyers. Some of the phone's content, like text messages she had sent to certain people prior to making the complaint, were clearly relevant and damaging to her credibility. But most of the data was entirely irrelevant or otherwise inadmissible, like her counselling notes, and shouldn't have been served. Now, the police in that case said they gave the defense Ms. Higgins' phone download by mistake, but I've seen several cases where it's been done knowingly. In other cases, the police might not serve the entire download of the phone, but they'll still serve a lot more than they should. For example, a year ago I was representing a guy who'd been charged with sexually assaulting a woman during a Hinge date. When the police served the prosecution evidence on my office, it included a partial Cellebrite download of her phone that contained sexually explicit messages that she had exchanged with another guy that had nothing to do with the case. The messages were never going to be admitted as evidence at my client's trial, but the cops gave them to us anyway. Another major issue is the lack of communication by police when they ask alleged victims to hand over their phones. To give you an example, a few months ago I gave advice to a woman who was an alleged victim of sexual assault and domestic violence by her ex-partner. When she first made the complaint, she showed the police the relevant messages on her phone. After her ex was charged, the cops asked for the phone so they could download the messages. But at no stage did they tell her that they were going to download her entire phone and then give it to her ex's lawyers. So she was understandably pretty distressed when she found out that her ex now had a copy of all of her messages with her friends and family, her photos, her health data, everything. She told me that had she known the police were going to do this, she might have thought twice about handing over her phone to them. It might surprise you to know that what I've just described is actually a pretty common experience for sexual assault complainants. In fact, it's so common that, in the recent inquiry by the Australian Law Reform Commission into justice responses to sexual violence, the advocacy group Full Stop Australia recommended a review of this celebrating practice to protect victims' privacy. Interestingly, the Law Reform Commission didn't adopt the recommendation in its final report. But regardless, I think this is a phenomenon that will receive a lot more media attention in the years to come. The next issue I want to talk about briefly is the lack of oversight when it comes to Cellebrite use. There are laws in this country that are designed to provide some accountability to the public about the use of police powers that undermine our civil liberties. For example, like I mentioned a bit earlier, each year the Federal Attorney General publishes a report that discloses important info about the use of telephone interception by law enforcement agencies in this country. This info includes how many agencies applied for phone tapping warrants, which crimes these agencies were investigating, how many warrants were granted, and how many were refused. So, we can see from last year's annual report that 3,007 interception warrants were granted, of which more than a third were for serious drug offences, followed by violence offences and murder. The report also provides info about the effectiveness of telephone interception, such as how many people were arrested on the basis of evidence obtained by phone tapping, the types of offences that these people were arrested for, and how many of them went on to be convicted. So, the same annual report from last year discloses that information obtained under phone tapping warrants led to 1,592 arrests and 1,060 convictions. The Commonwealth Attorney General has a similar reporting obligation for other police powers, such as stored communications warrants, which are what the police use to access text messages stored by providers like Telstra and Vodafone, and surveillance device warrants, which are what the police need to install listening devices, hidden cameras, and tracking devices. Here in New South Wales, similar reports are prepared each year about the use of various police powers, including surveillance devices and post search warrants. Now, in my view, the use of Celebrite technology to download phones is far more invasive than all of the police powers that I've just mentioned, yet none of the mechanisms designed to provide accountability for their use apply to Celebrite. As a result, we have no idea how many phones each agency is celebrating per year, what their reasons are for doing it, how effective it's been. Okay, so the last topic I want to cover today is what happens with all this highly sensitive data once it's downloaded from your phone. Now, I should make clear that everything I'm about to tell you is based on my own professional experience and research, not any law or policy. And the simple reason for that is that there are no laws governing Celebrite use in this country, and no government agencies publish policies about Celebrite use either. In fact, from conversations I've had with federal and state police officers, it seems that no policies or guidelines even exist, and this raises some real concerns. For example, I'm not aware of any requirement for the cops to destroy the data they've downloaded from a phone after any period of time. And this is not just for phones of people who are being found guilty of a crime, but all phones that are downloaded. So let's say the cops celebrate your phone because they suspect you've done a crime, but after they get through the downloaded data, they realize they got it wrong and no charges are laid. Well, they don't have to delete the download of your phone and it'll be stored on their database indefinitely. The same as if you're an alleged victim of crime. To use Brittany Higgins as an example again, the Celebrite download of her phone sat with the police long after the criminal prosecution of Lehman had been discontinued, and on 56,000 pages of ended up being subpoenaed in entirely separate defamation proceedings brought by Lehman against Network 10, and then in defamation proceedings brought by former Senator Linda Randall against Higgins. Another issue is that there are practically no constraints on how the data that's downloaded from our phones can be used. So let's say the cops are investigating a robbery, and you're a witness, recorded some videos of the crime, and then sent it to your mates. The cops then ask if they can download the videos and messages, and you, not knowing your rights, agree and give them your phone. The police then Celebrate your phone and see messages showing that you shared some pills with some mates at a music festival 8 years ago. Well, in theory, there's nothing stopping the cops from using that evidence to charge you with drug supply, even though it has nothing to do with what they're investigating in the first place, and you weren't even a suspect. There also doesn't appear to be anything from stopping the cops from sharing data that's downloaded from phones with other agencies. And with those agencies, they're sharing the data with other agencies. So if your phone is celebrated, it's almost impossible to know where your data will end up and who will get to see it. Perhaps the most important question with all of this is, can Celebrite itself access the data that is downloaded from people's phones? In an interview with Israeli media in 2019, then CEO Yossi Karma boasted that Celebrite controlled all products remotely. Now, that could be seen as an admission about access to data, but I accept it's not entirely clear what he meant. As a lawyer, I'm evidence-based, and I try to avoid unfounded speculation. Having said that, and just based on what we've spoken about until now, I don't think it's some far-fetched conspiracy theory to think that Celebrite may be able to access the data that's being extracted from people's phones using its products. I mean, let's not forget that we're talking about a company that is made up of elite Israeli army intelligence veterans, and that still has very close ties with the Israeli military. So if any company has the know-how and the motive to collect data, it's Celebrite. Let's look at the evidence. Specifically, I'm going to talk about two documents that are highly revealing, but as far as I'm aware, have never been reported on. The document contract between Celebrite and Services Australia. One is a license agreement for the use of Celebrite products, and the other is a contract for services provided by Celebrite. I can confirm that they're both authentic because I obtained them myself directly from Services Australia last month. Both of the contracts contain some really disconcerting clauses that I was genuinely shocked to see. Like the clause that requires Services Australia to provide Celebrite with its internal IT policy, or the clause designed to stop Services Australia's employees from telling Australian police about what Celebrite can do. But for today's purposes, I'm just going to focus on the clauses relevant to this question of access to data. Under the license agreement, Services Australia authorizes Celebrite to, in certain circumstances, access all devices, data and media contained on them, obtain and retain personal data on the devices, and access and intercept communications on devices. The Services Agreement goes even further, authorizing Celebrite to access or modify any data on any device it provides services for, as well as collecting, recording, disclosing, and transferring personal information on the device. The services are defined in the contract to include unlocking and extraction of devices, and then certain processing the data contained in them. So these contracts provide clear evidence that, at least in some situations, Celebrite can access the data that's been downloaded from our phones. How often this is occurring, we don't know, and we can't find out due to the complete lack of transparency. Now, the contracts I've just spoken about are only Services Australia. So you might be asking, are there similar clauses in Celebrite's contract with other agencies? Well, from the research I've carried out, the answer seems to be yes. Though it's easy to find, Celebrite's current license agreement is available on its website. The agreement is almost identical to the one with Services Australia, and it includes the same clause authorizing Celebrite to access data held by customers. The only other Celebrite license agreement I've been able to locate online is that from the Gilbert Police Department in Arizona, USA. It was buried back in council minutes, and so I'm not sure if many people have even seen it before. Here you can see the same clause authorizing Celebrite's access to customer data in certain circumstances. So that's Celebrite's license agreement, but what about its contract for services? Well, there doesn't appear to be any copies of it publicly available, but I'd be surprised if the one I've obtained from Services Australia is not standard. From the way the contract is drafted, it appears to be generic, and also most tech companies generally use the same contract with all customers to ensure consistency. Another troubling piece of this puzzle is that we don't know where government agencies store the data they download from our phones. Now, I know from experience that police in this country have traditionally saved the data on computers and hard drives at the station. However, Celebrite is slowly but surely transitioning its products to the cloud, and some products now operate exclusively on the cloud. Here is a video from last September for Celebrite's Pathfinder product, encouraging customers to use the product and host its data on the cloud instead of on local servers.
Deploying in the cloud allows your agency to invest more time, money, and resources into fulfilling your core mission.
Now, it's important to bear in mind that Pathfinder analyzes the data downloaded using all Celebrite products. So presumably, by using Pathfinder on the cloud, the agencies are uploading all of the data they've extracted from our phones and devices onto the cloud. Now, this begs the question, why is Celebrite trying to get government agencies to store all this data on the cloud? Can Celebrite access it more easily if it's on the cloud? Well, you won't find much information about this in the public domain. but I was able to locate this recent promo video from Cellebrite, where the spokesperson described what happens once data is remotely extracted from a phone or other device using Endpoint Inspector.
Once that collection completes, that's the UFD file, and that's that full kind of forensic image, and that's going to go to Cellebrite, where we're going to actually parse out that data. So it is going to come to Cellebrite, parse it into the UFDR, convert it, the messaging to the RSMF, and then we're going to transfer it over to Relativity One in the workspace that was set up during the job collection.
Now, she goes on the video to claim Cellebrite deletes all the data once it's processed for the customer. How do you know if this is true? It's worth mentioning that the cloud that Cellebrite uses is the Amazon Web Services, or AWS cloud. This raises concerns of its own because, like Cellebrite, AWS has close ties to the Israeli military. Specifically, AWS provides computing services, AI, and other services to the Israeli military under a $1.2 billion contract known as Project Nimbus. Now, I want to make clear that I'm not positively alleging that Cellebrite can access all of the data that's being downloaded from our phones using products. There's simply not enough evidence for me to make that claim. But I am saying that there's a real risk that they might be doing this, and in my opinion, that's not a risk worth taking. Okay, so now that I've just set out a very long list of concerns about Cellebrite and its use in Australia, I want to end with two main recommendations. First is that the federal and state governments reconsider their relationship with Cellebrite altogether. Now, there's no shortage of reasons why they should drop Cellebrite. From a moral standpoint, it's a no-brainer. Cellebrite has close ties with the Israeli army, which uses its surveillance products to further its brutal and illegal occupation of the West Bank. And although the details aren't clear, we also know that Cellebrite has assisted the Israeli military while they carry out what is now widely considered to be a genocide in Gaza. On top of that, Cellebrite has a track record of selling its products to repressive regimes which have used them against journalists, dissidents, and activists. Now, maybe you don't care so much about arguments based on morals or human rights, and you only care about what's in Australia's best interest. Well, there's still a really compelling reason to ditch Cellebrite, and that's security. As I've explained in this video, there are really good reasons not to trust Cellebrite with our data. At the end of the day, it's a foreign intelligence company made up of former spies from an intelligence unit of a foreign state to which it still appears to have close ties. I should add that Israel is not just any foreign state, but one with a long history of spying on its allies. Indeed, Israel has even been credibly accused of having previously spied in Australia. Cellebrite has the means and the motive to access our data, and it seems that it may already be doing this in some cases. It goes without saying that the protection of the personal data of Australian citizens should be a priority of our elected government and law enforcement agencies in this country. It's not like our government doesn't have any other options. Although I haven't covered them in this video, there are companies that offer similar products to Cellebrite, like Magna Forensics, MSAB, and Xtero. In fact, the Department of Home Affairs, which is what the Australian Border Force is a part of, recently switched from Cellebrite to Magna Forensics. Now, I'm not saying it's completely perfect, far from it, but they don't give rise to the same level of human rights and security concerns that Cellebrite does. My second recommendation is that the federal and state government should enact legislation regulating the use of phones to be the same. For the police, some of the main provisions should include the following. 1. There should be a ban on the police downloading our phones unless they've got a warrant. If there's a legitimate forensic need for the cops to get access to a phone, then they can explain that to a judge in the same way they would have to if they wanted to search your home or tap your phone. 2. The police should only be able to apply for warrants when they're investigating serious criminal offences and not minor ones. 3. The police should only be permitted to download and review data that is likely to be relevant to their investigation and not the entire phone's content. 4. The police should only be able to store the data for as long as is necessary for the investigation and prosecution. And if no charges are laid or the defendant is found not guilty, the data should be deleted. And lastly, 5. Each year, the police should be required to disclose the extent and effectiveness of the use of these products, and there should be independent auditing. Ultimately, this is one of the only ways to ensure that this highly intrusive technology is not being abused. Okay, so that brings me to the end of the first episode of the What and the Why. If you like this video, please give a thumbs up and leave a comment to help boost it in the algorithm. Each episode will be about a completely different topic, but they'll all be about matters that hopefully you'll find interesting and important. So if you'd like to see more, please subscribe to the channel and let your friends know about it. Until next time.
Palantir.
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 Palantir. Most people have no idea what this company actually does, but behind the scenes, Palantir has a plan, and it's quite smart. A plan to become completely indispensable to businesses and indeed nations around the world, embedding themselves so deeply in government departments that replacing the company becomes basically impossible. And investors are starting to wake up to this sneaky plan. In fact, in the last 12 months, Palantir's stock has quintupled. but the story goes much deeper than you think. So in this video, we're going to look into this data analysis company, what they are, who they are, and why they're running deep roots into businesses and governments around the world. So first things first, what on earth is this company? Palantir is a company that has built software designed to help large institutions, especially governments, make better decisions from their large data sets. For example, during the COVID-19 pandemic,
So I thought you were sleeping. So I thought you were sleeping. I had my door shut. I had my door shut. You just woke mommy up. You just woke mommy up.
Look what I made. Look what I made.
Oh, oh, nice first. Nice first.
Fine. Fine. Sleep with it. Balance, sleep with it. Balance. Huh? Huh? Yeah, look better. Yeah, look better. Good. Did it. Did it. And I added ring. And I added rings. Look at that. I added rings. With a little the one that you just this color too. See? See? Okay. Mm-hmm.
Nice. Busy.
I gotta refine a couple parts of it, but I got the gist of it now.
Okay.
But you can tell too, because you can tell where I started and where I ended. Philippine. Exactly.
What?
Philippine out there. I started looking for her. Right in front of the air fryer.
Dude, you were supposed to astical pie. You did astical pie. Yeah. Yeah. You do. We're supposed to ask.
Especially governments, like Ben. For example,
Okay, so obviously the dive is done. And it's late. I need to get some sleep. So this is going to be a continuation project. When I have time, I will be posting these videos, all the research that I've done, plus anything that pops up along the way. Then ask yourself, do we really need a technocracy? I don't believe we do. I think we just got too many people with too much time on their hands who rather push buttons and click mice rather than going putting a pair of work boots on and going to get their hands dirty. So yeah, support the trades. Good night, everybody.